The Mummy, 1999, is more than a simple adventure blockbuster. It is a rare example of a film that transformed an ancient horror legend into a thrilling cinematic journey. Behind its desert landscapes, terrifying curses, and unforgettable heroes lies a story about discovery, fear, loyalty, and redemption. This exploration reveals how the film balanced horror, humor, romance, and spectacle while creating a legacy that continues to inspire audiences decades after its release. Its legacy lives on. The goal of this analysis is to uncover why The Mummy became a reboot that audiences embraced instead of forgetting. Through its balance of mythology, comedy, romance, horror, and action, the film created an adventure formula that felt familiar yet fresh. This exploration reveals how the story rebuilt a classic monster for a new generation, proving that emotional characters and strong storytelling can transform an old legend into a timeless cinematic experience that attracts viewers. For more than 2 decades, audiences have searched for the next great adventure blockbuster, yet one question continues to remain unanswered. Why has Hollywood struggled to recreate the magic that The Mummy achieved in 1999? At first glance, it may appear to be a simple action film filled with ancient curses, desert battles, and impossible escapes. But beneath the spectacle exists something far more powerful. The Mummy captured the feeling of discovery, danger, romance, and wonder that defines the greatest adventures in cinematic history. Hollywood has spent decades trying to remake what The Mummy perfected. Studios have returned to familiar properties, expanded cinematic universes, and created larger visual spectacles. But many modern blockbusters often dissipate from memory shortly after release. Bigger explosions and more advanced technology do not automatically create unforgettable stories. What audiences remember are characters they connect with, moments that surprise them, and worlds that make them dream. The reason The Mummy continues to stand apart is not because it was flawless. It was because it understood what adventure truly means. It created a journey where every mystery felt exciting, every danger felt personal, and every character brought a unique energy to the screen. The fearless explorer, the brilliant historian, the ancient evil, and the unlikely romance between 2 very different people combined into a formula that still feels remarkably alive. For many viewers, the film is connected to childhood memories of discovering adventure movies for the first time. It represents the excitement of staying awake during a late-night viewing, feeling the tension of a supernatural threat, and experiencing the thrill of a world filled with hidden secrets. Those emotional connections are part of why the film has survived, changing trends and evolving audiences. From the opening moments in ancient Egypt to the unforgettable battles against supernatural forces, The Mummy delivered scenes that became permanently connected to popular culture. The atmosphere, the humor, the performances, and the visual effects created a movie experience that felt larger than life. But the true story behind its success goes deeper than nostalgia. Hidden beneath the action are carefully crafted choices involving character psychology, storytelling structure, mythology, and filmmaking innovation. Throughout this journey, we will uncover the details many viewers may have overlooked and explore why The Mummy remains one of the rare blockbusters that still feels like an adventure waiting to be discovered again. The film did not transport audiences to another place. It invited them to believe that worlds could hold mysteries worth exploring. That balance between fantasy and emotion became achievement, creating a legacy that continues to influence adventure cinema and reminding viewers why stories built on wonder never fade from memory. The journey ahead will take us beyond the surface of The Mummy and explore layers that turned a simple monster revival into a defining adventure experience. We will begin by looking at the film's creation, the decisions that shaped it, and the challenges involved in bringing an ancient legend back to life for modern audiences. Behind the excitement of the finished movie was a complicated production process that required balancing horror, comedy, romance, and action without allowing one element to overpower the others. From there, we will explore the story itself and examine why its characters remain memorable. Rick O'Connell, Evelyn Carnahan, and Imhotep are not just figures moving through an action plot. They represent ideas about courage, knowledge, obsession, and the consequences of the past, returning to the present. Their relationships create an emotional foundation that gives meaning to every chase, battle, and supernatural encounter. We will also uncover the symbolism hidden throughout the film, revealing how ancient mythology, forbidden knowledge, and the search for immortality reflect human fears and desires. The Mummy is a story about more than a curse. It is about what happens when people attempt to control forces beyond their understanding. The analysis will continue into the technical achievements that helped the film stand apart. We will examine the visual effects, practical filmmaking choices, atmosphere, and methods that created a believable world filled with both wonder and danger. These behind-the-scenes details reveal why the film still feels impressive even in an era of digital technology. Beyond production, we will explore how audiences and critics responded when the film arrived, why it became a cultural favorite, and how its influence continues to appear in modern adventure cinema. The Mummy's success was not only measured by box office numbers. It was measured by the emotional connection it created with viewers worldwide. Most importantly, this journey will reveal why the film still matters today. While filmmaking has changed dramatically, what made The Mummy special remains timeless. Memorable characters, genuine excitement, a sense of discovery, and the belief that adventure should feel magical. Along the way, we will uncover surprising details and forgotten choices that show why this 1999 blockbuster continues to capture the imagination of new generations and lasting influence today forever. For an entire generation of viewers, The Mummy is not simply a movie. It is a memory connected to a specific era when adventure films felt like invitations to explore unknown worlds. During the late 1990s and early 2000s, audiences discovered stories through VHS tapes, DVD collections, weekend television broadcasts, and trips to local rental stores. Before streaming changed how people experienced entertainment, finding a favorite movie often felt like discovering a hidden treasure. For many fans, watching The Mummy for the first time was an unforgettable experience. The film delivered the perfect combination of fear and excitement, creating moments that were thrilling without losing the sense of fun. The mysterious tombs, ancient curses, and supernatural dangers created genuine tension, while the humor and chemistry between the characters made the journey feel welcoming. A major part of that connection came from Brendan Fraser, whose performance as Rick O'Connell represented a different kind of action hero. He was brave but imperfect, confident but often overwhelmed, and capable of facing impossible threats while still feeling human. His charm helped define an era of adventure cinema before superhero franchises became the dominant force in Hollywood. The Mummy arrived during a time when audiences were searching for large-scale adventures built around characters rather than endless interconnected universes. It carried the spirit of classic exploration films while adding modern energy, creating a balance between old-fashioned storytelling and contemporary entertainment. That is why viewers continue returning to the film years later. Rewatching The Mummy is not only about remembering its action sequences or iconic moments. It is about reconnecting with the feeling it created. It reminds audiences of a time when movies could transport them into mysterious worlds and make every discovery feel important. The lasting appeal of The Mummy comes from that emotional connection. It represents childhood curiosity, unforgettable performances, and the excitement of experiencing a great adventure for the first time. Even as filmmaking continues to evolve, the emotions attached to those early viewings remain powerful. The film survives because it is not only remembered as a blockbuster, but as a shared experience that continues to bring audiences back to the magic of adventure. Its spirit still inspires new generations of adventure before. The Mummy became one of the most recognizable adventure films of the late 1990s. It began as a very different idea, rooted in Hollywood history. The story's origins trace back to Universal's classic monster era, a period when creatures like Dracula, Frankenstein, and the Mummy became symbols of cinematic horror. The original 1932 film, starring Boris Karloff as the ancient Egyptian priest Imhotep, focused primarily on mystery, fear, and supernatural terror. It created an atmosphere built around the unknown, where the past returned to haunt the present.
Decades later, Universal wanted to revive its legendary monster properties for a new generation. However, the challenge was clear. Audiences had changed. The horror style that worked in the early days of cinema could not simply be repeated. Viewers in the 1990s expected faster pacing, larger spectacle, stronger characters, and a more modern approach to storytelling. The studio needed a way to respect the original legacy, while creating something that could compete with the biggest adventure films of the era. This was where writer and director Stephen Sommers entered the picture. Instead of creating a traditional horror remake, Sommers imagined a completely different direction. He saw the potential for The Mummy to become a sweeping adventure filled with ancient mythology, humor, romance, action, and supernatural danger. His vision was not to replace the original film, but to transform its foundation into something that could connect with a wider audience. The script went through significant changes during development, as the filmmakers searched for the right balance between horror and entertainment. The central idea remained the same, an ancient evil returning to the modern world. But the tone evolved into something closer to a classic adventure story, combining the excitement of treasure hunting with the mystery of forgotten civilizations. This creative decision came with challenges. The filmmakers had to avoid making the movie feel like a simple monster story, while also maintaining enough darkness to honor its origins. Too much horror could limit its audience, while too much comedy could weaken the threat of the villain. Finding that middle ground became one of the most important aspects of the film's development. The casting process was equally important, because the movie depended heavily on the chemistry between its characters. For the role of Rick O'Connell, The filmmakers needed someone who could carry the energy of an old-fashioned action hero, while still bringing humor and vulnerability to the character. Brendan Fraser became the perfect choice. At the time, he was already known for his charisma and physical performances, but The Mummy allowed him to become a true leading man. Fraser's interpretation of Rick was different from many action heroes of the past. Instead of being a completely fearless warrior, he was someone who reacted naturally to danger. He could fight, survive, and take risks, but he also brought a sense of humor and humanity that made audiences connect with him. Alongside Fraser, Rachel Weisz was cast as Evelyn Carnahan, a character who became far more than a traditional adventure companion. Evelyn represented intelligence, curiosity, and courage. Her passion for history and ancient languages gave the story a sense of discovery, while her relationship with Rick provided the emotional center of the film. The production faced financial concerns because creating a large-scale adventure involving ancient cities, massive action sequences, and visual effects required a significant investment. The studio had to trust that audiences would embrace a movie that blended several genres at once. It was not purely horror, not only romance, and not simply an action film. It was a combination of many cinematic traditions. That combination was also the film's greatest creative strength. The goal was to create an experience that felt like a journey, rather than just a sequence of events. Every element, from the mythology to the characters, was designed to make viewers feel as if they were entering a forgotten world filled with danger and discovery. The development of The Mummy was ultimately a gamble. Reviving an old monster property and turning it into a modern adventure could have easily failed. But by understanding that audiences wanted emotion as much as spectacle, the filmmakers created something unexpected. They did not simply bring back a monster from the past. They rebuilt an entire cinematic experience around the timeless human desire to explore the unknown. When The Mummy entered development and prepared for release in 1999, Hollywood was experiencing a major shift in the way audiences viewed adventure films. The decade had already proven that audiences still loved stories built around exploration, mystery, and impossible challenges. Large-scale adventures were not simply about action. They were about transporting viewers into worlds that felt bigger than everyday life. The success of previous adventure classics had created expectations for what a theatrical experience should deliver. One of the biggest influences on the genre was Indiana Jones, a franchise that had established the formula for cinematic adventure. Audiences had grown familiar with the idea of brave explorers, ancient mysteries, hidden treasures, and dangerous villains chasing powerful artifacts. Any new adventure film entering that space faced the challenge of offering something recognizable, while avoiding the feeling of imitation. This created both an opportunity and a risk for The Mummy. The film carried the name of a famous Universal monster property, but its approach was dramatically different from the darker horror films that came before it. Instead of focusing only on fear and suspense, the marketing had to communicate that this was a massive adventure filled with humor, romance, action, and supernatural elements. The promotional campaign became a crucial part of shaping audience expectations. Trailers emphasized the scale of the film, showing ancient locations, terrifying creatures, explosive action sequences, and the mysterious return of an ancient evil. The goal was to convince viewers that The Mummy was not simply another remake of an old horror movie, but a completely new cinematic experience. However, early reactions were not entirely predictable. Some audiences questioned whether a forgotten monster property from decades earlier could successfully compete with modern blockbusters. The idea of reviving a classic Universal creature created uncertainty, because many viewers were unfamiliar with the original film and did not know what to expect. The studio had to convince audiences that this was not a film trapped in the past, but one designed for a new generation. The timing of the release also created additional pressure. Summer was one of the most competitive periods for Hollywood, with studios launching their biggest and most expensive projects. A film like The Mummy needed to stand out among established franchises, action spectacles, and highly promoted releases. The challenge was not only attracting viewers, but also convincing them that this adventure deserved to be experienced on the biggest screen possible. Universal's expectations were ambitious. The studio was not simply hoping for a successful weekend. It wanted to create a new franchise based on one of its historic properties. The investment in visual effects, international locations, and large action sequences reflected the belief that audiences would respond to a fresh interpretation of classic mythology. One of the biggest marketing challenges was deciding exactly how to present the movie. Was it a horror film about an unstoppable ancient curse? Was it an action-adventure filled with heroic escapes and thrilling battles? Or was it a romantic comedy with supernatural elements? The answer was all of these things combined, but communicating that balance was difficult. A film that tried to appeal to everyone could easily become difficult to define. Yet that mixture became the reason The Mummy connected with such a wide audience. It offered the fear of a monster movie, the excitement of an adventure epic, and the emotional appeal of a character-driven story. Before its release, The Mummy represented a gamble. It was an attempt to revive the past while embracing the future of blockbuster filmmaking. The question was whether audiences would accept a movie that blended so many different genres together. What followed would prove that sometimes the most unexpected combinations create the most memorable experiences. The film entered theaters carrying the weight of a legendary name, the pressure of summer competition, and the uncertainty surrounding a risky creative vision. But beneath all those challenges was a simple idea. Audiences still wanted to believe in adventure. They wanted stories that could make them feel wonder, fear, excitement, and discovery all at once. The Mummy was ready to test whether that feeling could still capture the imagination of a modern audience. The story of The Mummy begins thousands of years before the modern adventure unfolds, taking audiences deep into the ancient world of Egypt, where power, love, and betrayal create a curse that will echo across centuries. Before the heroes discover forgotten ruins or face supernatural dangers, the film first introduces the tragedy that gives birth to its greatest threat, the story of Imhotep. In ancient Egypt, Imhotep is not presented as a mindless monster. He is a powerful priest who holds knowledge, influence, and authority. His life changes when he falls deeply in love with Enkhsunemen, the pharaoh's mistress. Their relationship becomes dangerous because it challenges the laws and traditions of their world. Their love is passionate, but it is also forbidden, creating a conflict between human desire and the consequences of defying order. When their secret relationship is discovered after the pharaoh learns of the betrayal, tragedy follows. Enkhsunemen chooses death rather than capture, and Imhotep attempts to bring her back through forbidden rituals. Driven by grief and obsession, he crosses a boundary that ancient Egypt considers unforgivable. His attempt to defeat death transforms his love into a curse that will define his existence. Imhotep is captured and punished through the most terrifying form of imprisonment imaginable. He is condemned to suffer a fate worse than death, buried alive and cursed to remain trapped until the day he is awakened again. This punishment is not simply about revenge. It represents the ancient fear of disturbing forces beyond human control. The film establishes a powerful idea from the beginning. Some secrets are buried for a reason. After this dramatic introduction, the story shifts forward thousands of years, moving from ancient mythology into a world of exploration and discovery. The mystery of the past begins to collide with the ambitions of the present, setting the stage for a new group of characters who have no idea what they are about to unleash. The first modern character introduced is Evelyn Carnahan, a librarian and historian whose curiosity separates her from the people around her. While others see ancient texts as forgotten pieces of history, Evelyn sees them as gateways to understanding lost civilizations. Her intelligence and passion for knowledge make her different from the typical adventurer. She is not searching for treasure or glory. She is searching for answers. However, Evelyn's fascination with history often places her in difficult situations. She possesses the knowledge needed to uncover ancient secrets, but she lacks the experience required to survive the dangers connected to them. This contrast between intelligence and vulnerability becomes one of the defining elements of her character. Alongside Evelyn is her brother Jonathan, whose personality brings a lighter energy to the story. Jonathan is charming, humorous, and always interested in opportunities that could improve his situation. While Evelyn represents knowledge and responsibility, Jonathan represents curiosity and personal ambition. Their relationship adds warmth and humor, while also showing the different ways people approach the unknown. The final piece of this unlikely group is Rick O'Connell, an American adventurer and former soldier, whose life has been shaped by survival. Rick is introduced as someone who understands danger, but does not always take life seriously. Unlike Evelyn, He is not interested in ancient history, and unlike Jonathan, he is not chasing fortune. He is a man trying to move forward from his past. When Evelyn and Rick's paths cross, their differences immediately create tension. She relies on intelligence and planning, while he depends on instinct and experience. At first, they seem like complete opposites, but that contrast becomes the foundation of their connection. Together, they represent two different approaches to adventure, understanding the world and surviving it. Their journey begins when the legend of Hamunaptra, the mythical city of the dead, becomes more than just an ancient story. Hidden beneath layers of history and mystery, the lost city represents everything the characters are searching for. For Evelyn, it is a chance to uncover forgotten knowledge. For others, it represents unimaginable wealth and power. The discovery of Hamunaptra becomes the turning point that connects the past and present. What begins as an expedition into the unknown slowly transforms into something far more dangerous. The characters believe they are uncovering history, but they are actually reopening a chapter that was meant to remain closed. The first act of The Mummy carefully builds a world where every discovery carries consequences. Ancient mythology, personal ambitions, and forgotten curses all begin moving toward the same destination. The adventure has not truly begun yet, but the foundations have been established. The characters are searching for a lost city, unaware that the greatest discovery waiting for them is not treasure, but a force that has been waiting thousands of years to return. The search for Hamunaptra begins with a simple desire for knowledge, but like many great adventures, the journey quickly becomes something far greater than anyone expected. Evelyn Carnahan's curiosity pushes her beyond the safety of books and historical records. She has spent her life studying ancient civilizations, but there is a difference between reading about the past and standing directly in front of it. For Evelyn, Hamunaptra represents the ultimate discovery, a chance to prove that the legends hidden in forgotten texts were more than myths. However, reaching the lost city requires someone with experience in places where history and danger collide. That person is Rick O'Connell, whose introduction brings the story into a completely different world. While Evelyn approaches the unknown through research and preparation, Rick approaches it through instinct and survival. Their partnership begins under unusual circumstances when Evelyn must rescue Rick from execution in exchange for his help finding Hamunaptra. The prison rescue sequence immediately establishes the unique relationship between the two characters. It is not a traditional heroic introduction where the protagonist arrives with complete confidence. Instead, Rick is introduced as someone who needs saving, creating a humorous reversal of expectations. Yet beneath the comedy is an important detail. Evelyn recognizes something valuable in him. She sees his knowledge of the desert and his connection to the lost city as the missing piece of her expedition. Once Rick joins the mission, the unlikely team begins to take shape. Evelyn brings intelligence and historical knowledge, Jonathan brings humor and resourcefulness, and Rick provides the practical skills needed to survive the journey. None of them are perfect adventurers individually, but together they create a group capable of facing challenges none of them could overcome alone. Their path to Hamunaptra leads them across the vast Egyptian desert, a landscape that becomes more than just a setting. The endless sand, harsh conditions, and isolation create a feeling that the characters are leaving the familiar world behind. The desert represents a boundary between ordinary life and the unknown. The further they travel, the closer they move toward a place where ancient secrets are waiting to be uncovered. But they are not the only ones searching for the lost city. Another group of treasure hunters follows the same path, motivated by greed rather than discovery. These rivals create a contrast between two different reasons for exploring the past. Evelyn seeks understanding, while others see ancient history as a chance for personal gain. This conflict becomes one of the film's recurring themes. Knowledge can inspire wonder, but the desire to control it can create destruction. As the expedition continues, the mystery surrounding Hamunaptra grows stronger. The city is not simply a forgotten location hidden beneath the desert. It feels almost like a place protecting itself. Legends warn travelers about what lies within its ruins, and the closer the characters get, the more the journey feels like they are crossing into forbidden territory. The first sight of Hamunaptra captures the sense of wonder that defines classic adventure stories. Emerging from the desert, the ancient city feels impossible, like a lost world that has survived outside the reach of time. The towering structures, forgotten chambers, and hidden passages create the feeling that the characters have discovered something humanity was never meant to find. This moment represents the true threshold crossing of the adventure. Until this point, the characters were searching for a legend. Now they are standing inside it. The world of history and imagination begins to merge, and the rules of their reality start to change. Yet the discovery of Hamunaptra comes with a warning. Every great treasure carries a hidden cost, and the characters are unaware that their arrival has begun awakening something far more dangerous than they can understand. Their excitement, curiosity, and ambition bring them closer to the secrets buried beneath the city, but those same qualities may also become the reason those secrets are released. The journey has only just started, but the direction of the story is now clear. The characters entered the desert looking for answers, adventure, and perhaps fortune. What they find instead is a connection to an ancient force that has waited thousands of years for this exact moment. The search for the lost city has ended, but the real adventure is only beginning. Section 3.3. Act 2: A Rising Action. The discovery of Hamunaptra marks the moment when adventure begins transforming into something far more dangerous. What begins as an exploration of ancient ruins slowly becomes a confrontation with forces that were never meant to be disturbed. The characters entered the lost city searching for knowledge, treasure, and answers, but they soon discover that some discoveries come with consequences. Inside the ancient chambers of Hamunaptra, curiosity leads the explorers toward forbidden artifacts and forgotten secrets. Evelyn's desire to understand history pushes the group deeper into the ruins, where ancient writings and mysterious objects reveal the existence of powers beyond ordinary human understanding. To her, these discoveries represent a connection to the past. To others, they represent opportunities for wealth and control. The danger begins when the ancient remains of Imhotep are disturbed. The curse that once trapped him for thousands of years starts to weaken, allowing the forgotten priest to return to the world of the living. His awakening is not presented as a simple resurrection of a monster. It is the return of a person consumed by grief, anger, and an obsession that has survived through centuries. This is where The Mummy separates itself from a typical adventure story. The villain is not simply an obstacle for the heroes to defeat. Imhotep is a tragic figure whose power comes from a deeply human emotion: the inability to accept loss. His return represents what happens when the desire to overcome death becomes stronger than respect for the natural order. As Imhotep regains his strength, the consequences of his awakening begin spreading across Egypt. The ancient curses are unleashed through a series of terrifying plagues, each one reminding the characters that they have stepped into a world governed by forces they cannot control. These disasters transform the adventure from a search for history into a fight for survival. The rising danger forces the characters to change. Evelyn, who began the journey as a researcher searching for knowledge, must now confront the reality of the legends she studied. The stories written in ancient texts are no longer distant mysteries. They are becoming real threats. Her intelligence remains her greatest strength, but she must learn that knowledge alone is not enough when facing something beyond explanation. Rick O'Connell also begins to reveal a deeper side of himself. At first, he appears to be a reckless adventurer who uses humor to avoid responsibility. But as the danger grows, he naturally becomes the person others depend on. His experience, courage, and ability to remain calm under pressure transform him from a survivor into a true leader. The relationship between Rick and Evelyn develops alongside the increasing danger. Their connection begins with differences and disagreements, but those differences slowly become the reason they complement each other. Evelyn challenges Rick to think beyond survival, while Rick teaches Evelyn that courage sometimes requires action before having all the answers. Their romance grows naturally through shared experiences, rather than sudden attraction. Every dangerous moment reveals more about who they truly are. Rick discovers that Evelyn's intelligence and determination are just as valuable as physical strength, while Evelyn realizes that Rick's rough exterior hides loyalty, bravery, and compassion. Meanwhile, the threat surrounding Imhotep continues to expand. The characters are no longer competing against other treasure hunters or the challenges of the desert. They are facing an ancient power that grows stronger with every passing moment. The stakes become personal because their actions have consequences not only for themselves, but for everyone around them. The first casualties serve as a reminder that this is no longer a harmless expedition. The mystery of Hamunaptra has transformed into a battle against a force that cannot be reasoned with. The excitement of discovery is replaced by the fear of what has been awakened. Act 2A changes the entire direction of the story. The characters believed they were exploring the past, but the past has now found them. The adventure they imagined has become a fight between human curiosity and ancient power, between the desire to uncover secrets and the responsibility of knowing when some secrets should remain hidden. The journey into Hamunaptra has revealed its true nature, a place where history is not dead, but waiting. The awakening of Imhotep marks the moment when the adventure completely changes direction. What began as an exploration of ancient history has now become a desperate battle against a supernatural force that grows stronger with every passing moment. The characters are no longer searching for answers hidden in the past. They are trying to survive the consequences of uncovering them. Imhotep's resurrection is not immediate or simple. His return unfolds as a terrifying process where he slowly rebuilds his power by reclaiming the strength he lost during centuries of imprisonment. Each step brings him closer to becoming the unstoppable force that ancient legends warned about. The more power he gains, the less he resembles a forgotten priest from history, and the more he becomes a symbol of the danger created when humanity attempts to challenge the boundaries of life and death. The film uses this transformation to create a growing sense of fear. Imhotep is not just physically powerful, he represents something much larger. He is the past refusing to remain buried. Every supernatural event reminds the characters that they are facing a force shaped by thousands of years of anger, grief, and obsession. As Imhotep continues his resurrection, Evelyn becomes central to his plan. Her connection to ancient knowledge makes her valuable, but it also places her directly in danger. She is no longer simply the historian who discovered a lost city. She becomes part of the prophecy surrounding Imhotep's return, and the key to completing his ultimate goal. This creates a powerful contrast between Evelyn's original purpose and her new reality. At the beginning of the journey, she wanted to uncover history because she believed knowledge could bring understanding. Now that same knowledge has placed her in the center of a supernatural conflict. The thing that made her curious has become the thing that threatens her life. The ancient prophecy surrounding Imhotep reveals the true scale of the danger. His return is not an isolated event. It is connected to a larger plan involving power, immortality, and destruction. The characters begin to understand that they are not fighting against a single monster, but against an ancient force with consequences that could extend far beyond Hamunaptra. As the threat grows, the heroes experience their lowest point. The confidence they carried when entering the lost city disappears as they realize they have awakened something they cannot easily defeat. Their weapons, knowledge, and previous experiences seem meaningless against an enemy who controls forces beyond human understanding. Rick, who has always relied on courage and quick thinking, is forced to confront a challenge unlike anything he has faced before. This is no longer a battle against ordinary enemies or physical obstacles. He must protect the people around him while facing a threat that cannot be defeated through strength alone. The growing supernatural horror also changes the atmosphere of the film. The sense of adventure remains, but it becomes darker and more urgent. The mystery of Hamunaptra that once created excitement now carries a feeling of danger. The ancient ruins are no longer a place of discovery. They have become a battlefield between the living and the dead. Imhotep's increasing power creates a feeling of inevitability. Every victory he achieves makes the heroes feel further away from stopping him. The characters begin to understand that time is no longer on their side. Waiting for answers is no longer an option because the threat is becoming stronger with every moment. This midpoint crisis reveals the true heart of the mummy's conflict. The story was never only about finding a lost city or uncovering forgotten treasures. It was about the consequences of disturbing forces beyond human control. The heroes searched for the mysteries of the past, but they discovered that some mysteries are dangerous because they still have power. The journey that began with curiosity has now become a fight against extinction. The characters must overcome not only an ancient enemy, but also their own fears and mistakes. Imhotep has returned, his power continues to grow, and the possibility of stopping him seems smaller than ever. The adventure has reached its darkest moment, and the heroes must find a way to turn knowledge, courage, and trust into the weapons they need before the ancient evil becomes unstoppable. After a journey filled with discovery, danger, and impossible challenges, the final act brings the heroes back to the place where everything began, Hamunaptra. The ancient city that once represented mystery and adventure has now become the location of the ultimate confrontation between the living and the dead. What was once a destination for exploration has transformed into the battlefield, where the fate of everyone involved will be decided. The return to Hamunaptra carries a different feeling from the first time the characters entered its ruins. Earlier, the city represented excitement and discovery. Now, every shadow and every ancient chamber carries the weight of the danger they have unleashed. The heroes are no longer searching for forgotten knowledge or hidden treasure. They are returning because they understand that the threat must be stopped before Imhotep's power reaches its final stage. The final confrontation brings together every major element the story has built toward. Imhotep stands as the embodiment of uncontrolled desire and the consequences of challenging the natural order. He has spent thousands of years waiting for this moment, driven by his obsession with restoring what he lost. His power makes him appear almost unstoppable, but his greatest weakness comes from the very emotion that created him, his inability to let go of the past. Facing him are Rick, Evelyn, and Jonathan, a group that began as an unlikely collection of individuals but has become a true team. Each character contributes something essential to the final battle. Evelyn's knowledge of ancient texts becomes the key to understanding the enemy. Jonathan's determination proves that courage can come from unexpected places, and Rick's bravery places him directly between danger and the people he cares about. The battle against Imhotep is not simply a physical confrontation. It is a conflict between different ideas. Imhotep represents obsession, refusing to accept loss and attempting to control forces beyond human limits. The heroes represent acceptance, sacrifice, and the belief that some things cannot be restored without consequences. Ancient spells and forgotten writings become crucial during the final moments. The knowledge Evelyn spent years studying finally becomes more than academic information. It becomes a tool for survival. This creates one of the film's strongest ideas. Knowledge itself is neither good nor evil. Its impact depends on how people choose to use it. Rick's confrontation with Imhotep highlights the difference between the two characters. While Imhotep is powerful because of supernatural abilities, Rick's strength comes from his humanity. He does not possess ancient powers or unlimited knowledge. Instead, he relies on courage, loyalty, and his willingness to risk everything for others. The final battle also carries emotional stakes beyond defeating a villain. The characters have changed throughout their journey. Evelyn is no longer simply a historian searching for discoveries. She has become someone willing to face danger to protect others. Rick is no longer just a survivor trying to avoid responsibility. He has become a protector and leader. The sacrifices made during the climax reinforce the seriousness of the conflict. The heroes understand that defeating Imhotep requires more than escaping danger. It requires facing the consequences of their actions and accepting that their choices have changed their lives forever. When Imhotep is finally defeated, the victory feels meaningful because it is not achieved through simple force. The heroes succeed because they combine intelligence, courage, and trust. The ancient evil that threatened to return permanently to the world is finally stopped, allowing the balance between past and present to be restored. However, the danger does not end immediately. The collapse of Hamunaptra creates one final challenge, as the heroes must escape the same city that nearly destroyed them. The collapsing ruins provide a classic adventure ending, turning survival itself into one final race against time. The escape captures the excitement and energy that defined the film from the beginning. Once the danger has passed, the story shifts from survival to resolution. The characters emerge changed by their experience, carrying memories of a journey that few people would ever believe. The mystery of Hamunaptra remains hidden once again, but the impact of the adventure stays with them. The emotional conclusion also completes the relationship between Rick and Evelyn. What began as an unlikely partnership built on necessity develops into genuine love and respect. Their romance succeeds because it grows through shared challenges, rather than existing separately from the adventure. The treasure ending provides a final reminder of the film's playful spirit. While ancient gold and forgotten riches were what many characters originally searched for, the true rewards of the journey were the relationships formed and the experiences survived. The climax of The Mummy works because it combines everything the film promised from the beginning: action, mystery, romance, humor, and wonder. The heroes entered Hamunaptra looking for a lost city, but they discovered something far more valuable. They found courage, connection, and a story powerful enough to survive long after the ancient ruins disappeared. Rick O'Connell is one of those rare movie heroes who feels larger than life without ever feeling impossible to relate to. He can outrun danger, survive impossible situations, and face monsters that most people would never believe existed. Yet he never comes across as invincible. That balance is one of the biggest reasons The Mummy continues to resonate with audiences. Rick is not remembered because he is the strongest character in the film. He is remembered because he feels human. On the surface, Rick's goals seem straightforward. He wants to survive, earn a living, and avoid unnecessary trouble. When we first meet him, he is not searching for ancient secrets or dreaming of becoming a legendary hero. He is simply trying to make it through another day. That grounded motivation immediately separates him from many traditional action protagonists, who often begin their stories with grand missions or noble destinies. Beneath that practical attitude lies a much deeper motivation. Rick is someone who has already seen the harsh realities of life. As a former soldier and experienced adventurer, he understands loss, danger, and betrayal. Those experiences have taught him to trust his instincts more than promises and actions more than words. His confidence is not arrogance. It is the product of surviving situations where hesitation could mean death. One of Rick's most interesting qualities is the balance between courage and recklessness. At first glance, he appears fearless, charging into danger with little concern for his own safety. But the film gradually reveals that his actions are not driven by a desire to prove himself. He takes risks because someone has to. When others hesitate, Rick acts. That willingness to move first makes him a natural leader, even when he never actively seeks that role. This distinction is important because true leadership in The Mummy is earned rather than assigned. Rick never demands respect from the people around him. Instead, he gains their trust through consistent actions. Whether protecting Evelyn, helping Jonathan, or confronting supernatural threats, he repeatedly demonstrates that he will place himself in danger before asking anyone else to do the same. Another reason Rick stands apart is his sense of humor. Many action heroes rely on confidence alone, but Rick uses humor to diffuse tension and make impossible situations feel manageable. His jokes never undermine the seriousness of the story. Instead, they reveal his personality and his refusal to let fear control him. Even when surrounded by ancient curses and terrifying monsters, he finds moments to smile, reminding both the audience and his companions that hope still exists. That humor also makes him approachable. Rick never feels distant or untouchable. He reacts to terrifying situations the way many real people might, sometimes with disbelief, sometimes with sarcasm, and often with a mixture of both. Those reactions make the extraordinary events of the film feel more believable, because they are filtered through a character who still responds like a human being. Perhaps Rick's greatest strength is his moral compass. He is not motivated by greed, revenge, or personal glory. Although he appreciates treasure and enjoys adventure, he consistently chooses people over profit. As the story progresses, protecting Evelyn and the rest of the group becomes far more important than any reward waiting inside Hamunaptra. This shift reveals that beneath his rugged exterior is someone who values loyalty above everything else. Viewed through the lens of the classic hero's journey, Rick follows a remarkably satisfying arc. He begins as a capable but detached survivor, someone focused primarily on himself. The call to adventure pulls him into a world beyond ordinary experience, forcing him to confront supernatural threats that cannot be defeated by experience alone. Along the way, he forms meaningful relationships, accepts responsibility for others, and ultimately becomes the kind of hero who fights not because he has to, but because it is the right thing to do. His growth is subtle rather than dramatic, which makes it feel authentic. Rick does not undergo a complete personality transformation. Instead, the adventure reveals qualities that were always present beneath his confident exterior. His compassion, loyalty, and willingness to sacrifice become increasingly visible as the stakes rise. By the end of the film, he remains the same charismatic adventurer audiences met at the beginning, but he has also become someone capable of trusting others and allowing himself to care deeply. Much of this success comes from Brendan Fraser's performance. Fraser brought an effortless charm to Rick that is difficult to replicate. He combined physical athleticism with comedic timing, emotional sincerity, and genuine vulnerability. He could convincingly fight an army of supernatural enemies one moment and share a quiet, heartfelt conversation the next. That range prevented Rick from becoming a one-dimensional action hero. Fraser also understood that confidence does not require perfection. Rick gets hurt, makes mistakes, feels fear, and occasionally finds himself completely outmatched. Instead of weakening the character, these moments strengthen the audience's connection with him. Viewers see someone who keeps moving forward despite uncertainty, making his victories feel earned rather than inevitable. Ultimately, audiences connect with Rick O'Connell because he represents the kind of hero many people wish existed in real life. He is brave without being arrogant, funny without becoming a caricature, capable without feeling invincible, and compassionate without losing his toughness. He reminds us that true heroism is not defined by supernatural powers or flawless abilities. It is defined by the willingness to stand beside others when the world becomes frightening. That timeless combination of courage, humility, humor, and heart is why Rick O'Connell remains one of cinema's most beloved adventure heroes, and why his legacy continues to inspire audiences long after the credits roll. What makes Imhotep such a memorable villain is that he is never presented as evil for the sake of being evil. Beneath the terrifying appearance, supernatural abilities, and apocalyptic power lies a deeply human story. His journey begins not with hatred but with love. Ironically, the same emotion that drives many heroes becomes the force that transforms him into a monster. That emotional foundation gives Imhotep a complexity that elevates him far beyond the typical adventure villain. His relationship with Enkidu is built on forbidden love. As the high priest of Egypt, Imhotep occupies a position of enormous responsibility and influence, yet he chooses to risk everything for a relationship that violates the laws of his society. Their love exists in secret because it cannot survive in the open. From the very beginning, the audience understands that their story is destined for tragedy. When their secret is exposed and Enkidu dies, Imhotep refuses to accept reality. Instead of grieving and moving forward, he attempts to reverse death itself. This decision becomes the defining moment of his character. It is not love alone that destroys him, but his inability to accept loss. His grief evolves into obsession, and that obsession ultimately consumes his identity. Psychologically, Imhotep represents the danger of allowing a single desire to define an entire existence. Over thousands of years, he loses every part of himself except one purpose: bringing Enkidu back to life. Time no longer changes him. Reflection no longer changes him. The centuries that pass inside his curse do not heal his pain. They preserve it. By the time he returns, he is no longer driven by love in its purest form. He is driven by possession, memory, and an obsession that has become impossible to separate from his own identity. This distinction is important because it transforms his motivation. A healthy love accepts another person's freedom and the reality of life. Imhotep's version of love demands control over both. He believes he has the right to rewrite nature itself, even if countless innocent people suffer as a result. His tragedy lies in the fact that he no longer recognizes the difference between devotion and obsession. Revenge also becomes a powerful part of his psychology. Imhotep awakens into a world that punished him with unimaginable cruelty. Although his actions created his fate, he sees himself primarily as a victim of injustice. This perspective allows him to justify increasingly destructive choices. Every plague, every death, and every act of violence becomes acceptable because he believes the world owes him restoration. The theme of immortality further deepens his character. Most stories portray eternal life as a gift, but the mummy presents it as a curse. Imhotep survives for thousands of years, yet he experiences none of the growth that should accompany such a lifespan. He cannot evolve because he is emotionally frozen at the exact moment of his greatest loss. His immortality traps him inside his grief rather than freeing him from it. This makes him one of the film's most fascinating contradictions. He possesses extraordinary supernatural power, yet he is psychologically imprisoned by the same emotions that define ordinary human beings. His abilities make him nearly invincible, but emotionally he remains fragile. Everything he does is an attempt to erase a wound that can never truly be healed. One reason audiences continue to remember Imhotep is that glimpses of his humanity remain visible throughout the film. He is terrifying, but he is never completely empty. His moments of vulnerability remind viewers that the monster was once a man capable of genuine affection. These traces of humanity make his transformation more tragic, because they reveal what has been lost. His moral complexity also strengthens the story. The audience does not have to agree with his actions to understand his emotions. Nearly everyone understands grief, heartbreak, or the desire to undo painful moments from the past. Imhotep simply takes those universal feelings to catastrophic extremes. His choices demonstrate what happens when understandable emotions are allowed to override morality, empathy, and reason. As a tragic villain, Imhotep reflects many of the same themes embodied by Rick O'Connell. Both characters are motivated by protecting someone they care about. Both willingly face impossible dangers. Both refuse to surrender when confronted with overwhelming odds. The crucial difference lies in how they respond to love. Rick's love inspires sacrifice and respect for others. Imhotep's love becomes possession and domination. One accepts that true love sometimes requires letting go, while the other believes love justifies any action, regardless of its cost. This contrast transforms their final confrontation into more than a battle between hero and villain. It becomes a conflict between two opposing philosophies. Rick fights to preserve life and protect the future. Imhotep fights to reclaim the past, even if it destroys the present. Their struggle reflects one of the film's central ideas. We cannot truly live if we refuse to accept that loss is part of being human. Ultimately, Imhotep remains one of adventure cinema's most compelling antagonists, because he is both frightening and tragic. He reminds us that the greatest monsters are not always born from hatred. Sometimes they are created when love loses its balance, grief refuses to heal, and the desperate desire to rewrite yesterday becomes more important than living today. His story is a warning that even the noblest emotions can become destructive when they are consumed by obsession instead of guided by acceptance. One of the greatest strengths of The Mummy is that it never relies on a single character to carry the story. While Rick O'Connell serves as the central hero and Imhotep provides the primary conflict, the film succeeds because every major supporting character contributes something meaningful. Each member of the ensemble has a distinct personality, purpose, and perspective, creating a group that feels believable rather than assembled simply to move the plot forward. Their interactions transform the adventure from a series of action scenes into a journey shared by people audiences genuinely enjoy spending time with. At the center of this supporting cast is Evelyn Carnahan. On paper, she could have easily become a stereotypical love interest whose only purpose was to support the protagonist. Instead, the film gives her intelligence, determination, and genuine agency. Evelyn is the reason the adventure begins in the first place. Without her curiosity, knowledge of ancient languages, and relentless pursuit of history, Hamunaptra might have remained hidden forever. Her greatest strength is not physical ability but intellectual confidence. She solves problems through observation, research, and critical thinking. The film repeatedly demonstrates that knowledge can be just as heroic as strength. While Rick survives dangerous situations through experience and instinct, Evelyn survives by understanding the world around her. Together, they represent two equally valuable forms of courage. What makes Evelyn especially compelling is that her intelligence never removes her humanity. She makes mistakes, becomes frightened, and occasionally allows excitement to cloud her judgment. Those imperfections prevent her from becoming unrealistically perfect. Instead, they make her growth feel authentic. Throughout the adventure, she learns that knowledge alone cannot overcome every obstacle, while Rick learns that courage without understanding has limits. Their relationship becomes a partnership built on mutual respect, rather than dependence. Jonathan Carnahan provides another essential ingredient to the film's success. At first glance, he appears to exist mainly for comic relief. His constant search for easy money, his questionable decision-making, and his ability to stumble into trouble create many of the story's funniest moments. However, Jonathan serves a much deeper purpose than simply making the audience laugh. Adventure stories filled with supernatural horror can easily become emotionally exhausting. Jonathan acts as a release valve for that tension. His humor reminds viewers that the story never loses its sense of fun, even when the danger becomes overwhelming. More importantly, his comedy grows naturally from his personality, rather than interrupting serious moments. He reacts the way many ordinary people might react when confronted by curses, mummies, and ancient prophecies, with confusion, panic, and occasional selfishness. Despite his flaws, Jonathan repeatedly proves that he cares deeply about his sister and his friends. When genuine danger appears, he chooses loyalty over self-interest. Those moments reveal that beneath the charming opportunist is someone willing to stand beside the people he loves. This hidden bravery makes his character far more memorable than a simple comic sidekick. Another fascinating presence is Ardith Bay, whose introduction immediately expands the mythology of the film. Unlike the main characters, Ardith understands the true danger of Hamunaptra from the beginning. As the leader of the Medjay, he represents ancient responsibility carried into the modern world. His mission is not to seek treasure or knowledge, but to prevent history's darkest secrets from returning. Ardith Bay functions almost like the bridge between two different worlds. He understands the ancient legends that Evelyn studies, yet he also recognizes the practical realities that Rick faces. His calm confidence and unwavering sense of duty create an effective contrast with the more impulsive personalities surrounding him. Perhaps the film's greatest achievement is the chemistry shared by the entire ensemble. None of the relationships feel forced. The conversations, disagreements, jokes, and moments of trust develop naturally over time. The audience believes these characters enjoy being together, argue with one another, and eventually become something resembling a family. Friendship becomes one of the story's strongest themes. The heroes succeed not because any single individual possesses every necessary skill, but because each person contributes something unique. Rick brings leadership and courage. Evelyn provides knowledge and determination. Jonathan offers adaptability and optimism. Ardith contributes wisdom and experience. Individually, they have weaknesses. Together, they become capable of confronting an ancient evil. Humor plays a vital role in maintaining this balance. Many modern adventure films struggle to combine comedy with genuine suspense, often allowing one to undermine the other. The Mummy avoids this problem because its humor grows directly from character interactions. Rick's playful confidence, Evelyn's occasional awkwardness, Jonathan's constant improvisation, and Ardith's quiet seriousness create comedic moments without reducing the danger posed by Imhotep. The contrasts between the characters also strengthen the narrative. Rick is practical while Evelyn is academic. Jonathan is impulsive while Ardith is disciplined. These differences create conflict, but they also create opportunities for growth. The characters challenge one another's assumptions, forcing each person to expand beyond their original perspective. Even the smaller supporting characters leave lasting impressions. Explorers, treasure hunters, soldiers, and local guides each contribute to the sense that this world extends beyond the immediate story. Some represent greed, others courage, and others the tragic consequences of underestimating ancient powers. They enrich the narrative by showing multiple reactions to the same mysterious world. Ultimately, The Mummy demonstrates that unforgettable adventures are built on unforgettable relationships. Spectacular action may capture attention, but it is the ensemble's warmth, humor, loyalty, and chemistry that keep audiences emotionally invested. Every supporting character strengthens the story in a different way, proving that the greatest cinematic adventures are never about a lone hero. They are about ordinary people with extraordinary differences learning to trust one another when facing the impossible. That sense of teamwork remains one of the film's most enduring and beloved qualities. Although The Mummy is remembered for its thrilling action and unforgettable adventure, its lasting appeal comes from the ideas hidden beneath the spectacle. Every major event in the film reflects a deeper theme, giving the story emotional and philosophical weight beyond its entertaining surface. These themes are woven naturally into the narrative, allowing audiences to enjoy the adventure while also connecting with timeless questions about human nature. One of the film's strongest themes is curiosity versus consequences. Nearly every important event begins because someone wants to uncover what has been hidden. Evelyn's curiosity is driven by a sincere desire to understand history, while other explorers are motivated by treasure and personal gain. Curiosity itself is never portrayed as wrong. In fact, it is the reason humanity continues to discover, learn, and progress. The problem arises when curiosity is separated from responsibility. Hamunaptra becomes a symbol of forbidden knowledge. The warnings surrounding the city exist for a reason, yet the characters believe they can control whatever they discover. Their confidence reflects a common human belief that knowledge automatically brings power. Instead, the film suggests that knowledge also brings responsibility. Opening a sealed tomb is not simply an archaeological achievement. It is a decision with consequences that extend far beyond the individual making it. Another central theme is the difference between love and obsession. At first, Imhotep's devotion to Enkhsu-Naaman appears romantic, but as the story unfolds, that devotion becomes increasingly destructive. His refusal to accept her death transforms love into possession. Rather than honoring the life they shared, he becomes consumed by the desire to reverse reality itself. Rick and Evelyn provide the opposite example. Their relationship develops through trust, sacrifice, and mutual respect. Neither attempts to control the other. Instead, they grow stronger by supporting one another's strengths and accepting one another's weaknesses. By placing these two relationships side by side, the film explores how love can either inspire growth or become dangerous when it refuses to let go. The theme of life and death runs through every part of the story. Ancient Egyptian mythology often focused on the afterlife, making it the perfect backdrop for a narrative about resurrection and immortality. Imhotep believes death is an obstacle to overcome, while the heroes gradually realize that attempting to defeat death carries devastating consequences. The film does not treat mortality as a weakness, but as an essential part of what gives life meaning. Closely connected to this idea is the tension between fate and free will. Ancient prophecies and curses suggest that certain events have already been set into motion, yet the characters constantly make choices that influence the outcome. Evelyn chooses to pursue knowledge. Rick chooses to protect others instead of abandoning them. Jonathan repeatedly decides to stand beside his friends despite his fear. These choices remind viewers that while circumstances may shape our lives, our responses define who we become. Adventure and discovery also function as more than exciting plot devices. The journey to Hamunaptra reflects humanity's endless desire to explore the unknown. The film celebrates that spirit of exploration while reminding audiences that every discovery carries responsibility. The greatest explorers are not simply those who find hidden places, but those who understand the importance of respecting them. The story repeatedly presents knowledge as power, but it carefully avoids suggesting that power alone is enough. Evelyn's understanding of ancient languages ultimately becomes one of the hero's greatest advantages, proving that education can be just as valuable as physical strength. At the same time, the film warns that knowledge without wisdom can become dangerous. The same ancient texts that save lives also contain the secrets that awaken Imhotep. Another recurring theme is human greed. Many of the supporting characters enter Hamunaptra motivated by gold and priceless artifacts. Their desire for wealth blinds them to obvious warnings, making them vulnerable to the dangers surrounding them. The film never argues that ambition is inherently wrong, but it demonstrates how greed can narrow judgment until people ignore risks that should be impossible to miss. Ultimately, these themes give the mummy a relevance that extends far beyond its setting. Every generation faces questions about curiosity, ambition, love, loss, responsibility, and the temptation to control forces beyond human understanding. While the story unfolds among ancient ruins and supernatural curses, its emotional conflicts remain surprisingly modern. That universal quality is why the film continues to resonate decades after its release. Beneath the action, humor, and visual spectacle lies a timeless reminder that our greatest strengths, our curiosity, our love, and our ambition, can also become our greatest weaknesses if they are not balanced by wisdom, humility, and compassion. It is this blend of thrilling entertainment and enduring human truth that transforms The Mummy from a memorable blockbuster into a story that continues to speak to audiences across generations. One of the reasons The Mummy continues to reward repeat viewings is its rich visual storytelling. Long before characters explain the rules of the world, the film communicates ideas through its imagery, colors, locations, and recurring symbols. Every major setting feels carefully designed to reinforce the story's themes, allowing the visuals to tell their own narrative alongside the dialogue and action. The most obvious layer of symbolism comes from the film's use of ancient Egyptian imagery. Massive statues, towering temples, hieroglyphics, and sacred monuments do far more than create an exotic backdrop. They constantly remind viewers that the modern characters are entering a civilization whose history stretches far beyond their own understanding. Every stone structure suggests permanence, while the human characters appear temporary by comparison. The visual contrast emphasizes one of the film's central ideas. Civilizations may disappear, but the consequences of their actions can survive for thousands of years. Gold appears repeatedly throughout the story, carrying multiple meanings at once. On the surface, it represents treasure, wealth, and the promise of fortune that attracts explorers to Hamunaptra. Nearly everyone who enters the lost city dreams of discovering priceless riches. Yet the film gradually reveals that gold is also a distraction. Characters who focus only on material rewards often overlook the far greater danger surrounding them. In this way, gold becomes a symbol of temptation, illustrating how greed can blind people to the consequences of their choices. Perhaps the film's most memorable visual motif is sand. The Egyptian desert is far more than a beautiful landscape. It functions almost like a living force that shapes the entire narrative. Sand hides ancient cities, preserves forgotten secrets, and swallows evidence of past civilizations. It represents the passage of time itself, slowly covering history until only fragments remain. At the same time, sand becomes associated with Imhotep's supernatural power. As his strength grows, the desert itself seems to respond to his presence. Sand transforms from a natural element into a visual reminder that the ancient curse is spreading. This repeated connection between the villain and the environment reinforces the idea that Imhotep is no longer simply a man. He has become part of something much larger and more elemental. The scarab beetle carries another powerful symbolic meaning. Historically connected with rebirth and transformation in ancient Egyptian culture, the film reimagines the scarab as both fascinating and terrifying. Instead of representing peaceful renewal, it becomes a reminder that rebirth can also be horrifying when achieved through unnatural means. Every appearance of the scarabs reminds audiences that life and death exist in a fragile balance that should not be disturbed. Throughout the film, the contrast between light and darkness quietly reflects the emotional journey of the characters. Bright desert landscapes often accompany moments of exploration, hope, and discovery. In contrast, underground tombs, shadow-filled corridors, and candlelit chambers create feelings of uncertainty and fear. Darkness conceals hidden dangers, while light frequently represents truth and understanding. Yet the film cleverly avoids making this symbolism too simple. Some of the greatest dangers emerge in broad daylight, reminding viewers that appearances can be deceptive. The architecture of ancient Egypt also functions as visual storytelling. The enormous temples, hidden chambers, and intricate carvings communicate a sense of mystery before a single word of exposition is spoken. The sheer scale of these structures suggests a civilization capable of extraordinary achievements, while also hinting at the immense power once held by those who built them. Every corridor and monument reinforces the feeling that the characters are walking through history, rather than merely visiting an archaeological site. Recurring visual patterns strengthen this atmosphere even further. Circular symbols, repeating hieroglyphs, sealed doors, and hidden passageways appear throughout the film, constantly reinforcing the idea that history repeats itself. The characters believe they are uncovering the past, but the repeated imagery suggests they are actually stepping into a cycle that has already been written long before their arrival. The film also excels at hidden visual storytelling through subtle contrasts. Rick is frequently framed in open spaces, emphasizing his freedom, adaptability, and willingness to move forward. Imhotep, in contrast, is often surrounded by towering monuments, enclosed chambers, or overwhelming supernatural imagery, visually connecting him to the weight of the past. Evelyn often occupies spaces filled with books, artifacts, or ancient inscriptions, reinforcing her identity as someone who bridges forgotten history and the modern world. Taken together, these visual choices create a film that communicates on multiple levels at once. Viewers may first remember the spectacular action and impressive special effects, but repeated viewings reveal a carefully constructed visual language filled with symbolism and thematic meaning. Every grain of sand, every golden artifact, every ancient wall, and every shadow contributes to a larger story about history, temptation, mortality, and humanity's endless desire to uncover what time has buried. It is this attention to visual detail that gives The Mummy a richness rarely found in blockbuster adventure films, allowing its imagery to remain as memorable as its characters and unforgettable moments. Beneath its thrilling chases, supernatural battles, and adventurous spirit, The Mummy quietly explores ideas that extend far beyond the surface of its story. While the film never presents itself as a philosophical drama, many of its most important messages emerge through the decisions its characters make and the consequences they face. These deeper meanings help explain why the movie continues to feel relevant long after its release. One of the most interesting themes is its subtle commentary on colonial-era archaeology. Many of the characters arrive in Egypt believing they have the right to uncover, remove, and possess artifacts that belong to an ancient civilization. Lost tombs are viewed as opportunities rather than sacred places, and historical treasures become objects to collect instead of cultural legacies to preserve. The film never turns this into an explicit political statement, but it repeatedly suggests that treating history as property rather than heritage invites disaster. This naturally connects to the broader idea of respect for history. Hamunaptra is not dangerous simply because it contains a monster. It is dangerous because generations of people ignored the warnings left behind by those who understood its secrets. Ancient civilizations are often portrayed as primitive in popular fiction, yet The Mummy reverses that assumption. The people of the past understood the threat posed by Imhotep and created elaborate systems to contain him. The modern explorers, armed with advanced technology and confidence, underestimate that ancient wisdom and pay the price. The film also explores how power can corrupt, even when it begins with understandable intentions. Imhotep's original goal is deeply personal. He wants to bring back the woman he loves. But the power he seeks gradually transforms that desire into domination. His supernatural abilities become less about love and more about control, showing how unchecked power often changes the motivations of those who possess it. The story suggests that power is most dangerous when it convinces someone they no longer have limits. Another recurring idea is the fear of the unknown. Throughout the film, the greatest source of terror is rarely what the characters can see. Instead, it is what remains hidden beneath the sand, behind sealed doors, or inside forgotten legends. This fear reflects a universal human experience. People naturally fear mysteries they cannot explain, yet they are also drawn toward them. The tension between curiosity and fear drives nearly every important decision in the story. Rather than inventing an entirely new mythology, the film adapts ancient Egyptian beliefs into a modern adventure narrative. While many historical details are fictionalized for entertainment, the movie respects the grandeur and mystery of Egyptian mythology. Ideas about the afterlife, sacred rituals, curses, and divine judgment provide the emotional foundation of the story instead of serving as simple decoration. This approach allows ancient myths to feel alive for contemporary audiences, while preserving their sense of wonder. At its heart, The Mummy is also a story about human ambition. Nearly every major character wants something beyond ordinary life. Evelyn seeks knowledge. Jonathan dreams of fortune. The treasure hunters pursue wealth. Imhotep desires immortality and lost love. Rick initially seeks survival but gradually discovers a greater purpose. None of these ambitions are inherently wrong. The difference lies in how far each character is willing to go to achieve them. This leads directly to one of the film's most enduring ideas. Ancient wisdom often exists for a reason. Modern characters repeatedly dismiss old legends as superstition, only to discover that those stories were preserving knowledge accumulated through centuries of experience. The warnings surrounding Hamunaptra are not obstacles meant to prevent discovery, but safeguards designed to protect future generations. In this sense, the film argues that progress should not require rejecting the lessons of the past. These ideas give the movie surprisingly rich philosophical undertones. It asks whether humanity truly becomes wiser with technological advancement, or whether confidence sometimes causes people to repeat the same mistakes throughout history. It questions whether every mystery needs to be solved and whether every door should be opened simply because it can be. Most importantly, it reminds viewers that knowledge without humility can become just as dangerous as ignorance. By the end of the film, the greatest lesson is not that ancient curses are real, but that every generation inherits responsibilities from those who came before it. History is not merely a collection of forgotten events. It is a record of human choices, triumphs, and failures. The Mummy suggests that respecting the past is not about refusing to explore it. It is about recognizing that wisdom often survives in unexpected places, and that true discovery requires not only curiosity, but also restraint, humility, and the courage to learn from those who came before us. When The Mummy premiered in 1999, audiences were amazed by its visual effects, but what makes the film remarkable today is not simply that it looked impressive for its time. It is the way those effects were used to support the story rather than replace it. The visual spectacle always serves the characters, the atmosphere, and the sense of adventure. More than 2 decades later, many sequences still hold up surprisingly well, because the filmmakers understood that convincing effects are built on careful integration instead of constant display. The late 1990s represented an exciting period for digital filmmaking. Computer-generated imagery was advancing rapidly, allowing filmmakers to create images that would have been impossible only a few years earlier. At the same time, audiences had become more demanding. Simply showing digital effects was no longer enough. They needed to feel believable within the world of the film. The Mummy arrived at exactly the right moment, combining new technology with traditional filmmaking techniques in a way that felt seamless. A major reason for the film's success was the involvement of Industrial Light Magic, better known as ILM. Already recognized as one of the world's leading visual effects studios, ILM had helped redefine cinematic effects through projects ranging from Star Wars to Jurassic Park. For The Mummy, the artists faced an entirely different challenge. Instead of creating dinosaurs or spacecraft, they needed to bring an ancient supernatural force to life while maintaining a sense of realism. One of the film's most iconic achievements is the massive sandstorm sequence, where Imhotep's face emerges from an enormous wall of swirling sand. Even today, it remains one of the movie's defining images. Technically, this sequence required an extraordinary combination of particle simulations, digital modeling, lighting, and compositing. More importantly, it visually communicates the scale of Imhotep's power. He is no longer confined to a human body. He has become a force capable of controlling the environment itself. The brilliance of this effect lies in its symbolism as much as its technical execution. Sand has always represented time, history, and the hidden mysteries of Egypt. By allowing Imhotep to manipulate the desert itself, the filmmakers transform him into a living extension of the ancient world. The visual effect reinforces the story, rather than existing solely to impress the audience. Another unforgettable achievement is Imhotep's facial regeneration. Throughout the film, audiences watch him gradually recover from his decayed, skeletal appearance until he once again resembles a living human. This transformation creates an evolving visual narrative. Every stage of his regeneration reflects his increasing strength, allowing viewers to understand his growing power without relying entirely on dialogue. The sequence demanded remarkable attention to detail. Digital artists had to create believable layers of skin, muscle, and bone while preserving the actor's facial performance beneath the effects. Rather than feeling artificial, the transformation appears disturbingly organic, making Imhotep's return both fascinating and unsettling. It remains one of the most memorable examples of digital character work from its era. The film's scarab beetles provide another excellent example of visual effects supporting emotional storytelling. Individually, the insects are relatively small digital creations, yet their movement, speed, and overwhelming numbers create genuine fear. The horror comes not from exaggerated violence, but from the relentless nature of the swarm. Their unpredictable behavior transforms ordinary spaces into places of panic, demonstrating how effective animation depends as much on movement and timing as visual detail. Despite these groundbreaking digital achievements, The Mummy never relied exclusively on CGI. Practical effects remained a crucial part of the production. Real sets, physical props, makeup, miniature work, and carefully choreographed stunt performances provided tangible foundations for the digital elements. This combination gives the film a physical presence that many fully digital productions struggle to achieve. The actors were often interacting with actual environments rather than empty green screen stages. As a result, the digital effects feel integrated into the world instead of floating above it. This balance between practical craftsmanship and computer-generated imagery is one of the main reasons the movie continues to age gracefully. The audience senses that much of what they are seeing physically exists, making the impossible moments easier to accept. From an industry perspective, The Mummy demonstrated how visual effects could enhance adventure storytelling without overwhelming it. The film arrived during a transitional period when Hollywood was learning how to blend practical filmmaking traditions with rapidly evolving digital technology. Its success encouraged future productions to pursue a similar balance, proving that spectacle is most effective when it remains connected to character and narrative. Perhaps the greatest achievement of the visual effects is that audiences rarely think about them while watching the film. Instead of noticing individual computer-generated shots, viewers become immersed in the adventure itself. That is the highest compliment any effects team can receive. The technology disappears, leaving only the story. Even today, the sandstorm, the resurrection of Imhotep, the scarab attacks, and the collapsing ruins remain instantly recognizable images. They continue to influence adventure and fantasy filmmaking because they demonstrate that memorable visual effects are not defined by technical complexity alone. They succeed when every digital creation strengthens the emotion, atmosphere, and mythology of the story. The Mummy understood this principle perfectly, creating visuals that remain impressive not simply because they were ahead of their time, but because they were crafted in service of timeless storytelling. Every memorable blockbuster has a creative voice guiding its many moving parts, and in The Mummy, that voice belongs to Stephen Sommers. While audiences often remember the film for Brendan Fraser's performance, the spectacular visual effects, or its unforgettable action sequences, much of what makes the movie work can be traced back to Sommers' clear understanding of tone. He knew exactly what kind of film he wanted to make and, more importantly, what kind of film he did not want it to become. One of Sommers' greatest achievements was refusing to treat The Mummy as a straightforward horror remake. The original 1932 film relied heavily on atmosphere, suspense, and gothic horror, but simply repeating that formula in 1999 would have limited both its audience and its creative potential. Instead, Sommers envisioned an adventure that borrowed the mystery of classic monster movies while embracing the excitement of modern blockbuster filmmaking. That decision shaped every aspect of the production. Rather than asking whether a scene should be frightening or funny, Sommers often allowed it to be both. A terrifying encounter with supernatural creatures could be followed by a perfectly timed joke without feeling inconsistent. This balance prevented the film from becoming emotionally exhausting, while also ensuring that the comedy never weakened the genuine sense of danger. Finding that balance required remarkable discipline. Many films struggle when mixing genres because dramatic moments become undercut by excessive humor, or serious scenes become unintentionally melodramatic. The Mummy succeeds because the humor almost always comes from the characters rather than the situation itself. Rick's confidence, Jonathan's constant improvisation, and Evelyn's occasional awkwardness generate comedy naturally, allowing the supernatural horror to remain convincing.